Hello. Hello, everybody. We need to talk about the real. Come back to what is true, always has been true, always will be true. I just feel it's time because over the past few weeks we've been talking about some difficult things. Mind control, systems of manipulation, the dark underbelly of the funding mechanisms of the matrix and all of that stuff, all the ways that consciousness has been distorted through our institutions, through technologies, everything that's coming to light. That's really been a topic of conversation even in this space for the last several weeks. So today I want to step back and widen the lens again, because if we only focus on the distortion, then we'll miss the deeper truth. Also, whatever we focus on grows, as we know. So I want to come back to oneness, not as a spiritual bypass to be like, oh, everything is one, no matter what's going on in the world, but as a truth, okay? We need to balance, we need to remain balanced, and we need to not understand, but we need to be able to feel within ourselves contrasting expressions of life, right? To be able to hold contrast, hold contradiction within our own space. All right, so the deeper truth that is really worth remembering, especially if you start feeling overwhelmed by everything that's going on out there and, all of the disclosure and the sometimes, really, really ugly, disturbing things that we're hearing about, it's worth reminding yourself, and I'm reminding myself, that the deeper truth is that nothing, not even the matrix, is outside of the one. Nothing can exist outside of the one. Nothing in this entire universe can exist outside of it. All right, this is a universal principle. Every wisdom tradition in some form has expressed this as universal lore, as above, so below, as within, so without, the principle of oneness, of fractality. So, we can think of it as the macrocosm reflecting the microcosm, and vice versa. The universe reflecting the individual, and the individual reflecting the universe. The field of consciousness expressing itself in countless forms. Everything that we see, everything that we experience, everything that enters into our awareness, every star, every tree, every human being, every distortion, every system we have built is an emanation of Source taking form. Whether we deem that we like that form or not, it is not outside of the Source. So even what we call the matrix, even the forces that have separated themselves from empathy, from connection, from the living field, from what is real and organic and natural and true, even those forces, which we can call evil or, the inverse of life, are not outside of Source. They are expressions of consciousness that have moved into deep states of separation. And this is important. It's important for us to remember that. And in recognizing it, we are in no way justifying or excusing harm, but we are contextualizing it in something much vaster. It's a remembrance of true cosmology and universal lore. Separation creates distortion. Distortion creates suffering, but the field that contains all of that remains whole. It can never be divided in itself. So, last year on the podcast, I was talking about light, and how we can understand this through the nature of light itself. Light is the building blocks of our universe, right? So everything can be understood in terms of the dynamics of light and wave dynamics. So if you imagine or just know that light is the fundamental substance of reality, and if we look deeply enough into the nature of the universe, everything resolves into light, right? Not metaphorically, like literally. Matter, energy, information, all of it can be understood as patterns of light. And if you imagine the sine wave, which is the simplest expression of that vibration of light at the center, is this line of equilibrium, right? And the wave goes above and below that line equally, right? And so if you think of that line as source, right? Pure coherence, pure unity, as the wave moves away from that center line, a couple things happen. Number one, the amplitude of the wave increases, right? And so the wave starts to experience polarity as it moves away from the center line. And then the distance from equilibrium grows. The system becomes more differentiated. So the farther a wave moves away from center, the more contrast it experiences. So we get high and low and light and shadow, expansion and contraction. We get all of the polarities that we experience in our universe. This is not a mistake. This is the nature of experience, the contrasting experiences of our universe. So, at smaller amplitudes, the wave still feels connected to the center. But as the amplitude grows, then the extremes become more pronounced. And at the outer edges of the wave, the oscillation away from center is so strong that the connection to the center can feel almost forgotten. And that is the great challenge of our universe, right? Is that because of the nature of the building blocks of our universe, we can actually forget and get lost for eons of time in a perceived separation, in differentiation. That is all within the possibility of our universe. I mean, when you stop to think about it, it's kind of amazing, right? This is where consciousness begins to experience a sense of separation, not because the connection is gone, but because the contrast becomes more dominant. So separation is not the absence of the source, because the source is still within everything, but it's the experience of distance from it. So light and shadow are really one movement in a sine wave, because the crest and the trough they're not separate phenomena. They are the same motion expressed in opposite directions, right? That's light and shadow, love and fear. I mean, you can put any two contrasting expressions in there and understand what that is, and then understand that they're expressions of the same underlying field. So the wave cannot return to center by rejecting half of itself. It returns by integrating the full arc of its experience, right? It goes way far away and then it comes back. It has to integrate the full arc of its experience. And this is where I start to get very excited, because this is where our shadow work comes in, right? This is what it is. The shadow work of us as individuals, the shadow work of us as a humanity, the shadow work of us as a cosmos. we are made of this. We must experience contrasting expressions. So therefore we all have shadow work to do. Nobody is spared. All right. This is not a punishment of any kind, is that it's a reintegration of all experience. This is what we're seeing. And then the return movement, because every wave, no matter how far out it goes away from source, away from center, it eventually has to cross the central line again. And that crossing point is the coherence. So, but it's not the same coherence that existed before the wave expanded in experience. Now it is an informed coherence, right? The wave went away. It had an experience of total separation. And now it has come back to the central point, to the central line, if you will, in our metaphor, of coherence. Now it is informed by all of that experience. So, it carries the memory of the entire journey, the heights, the depths, the shadows, the light. And this is what many traditions describe, when they describe evolution, they're describing it in terms of remembering. I love that word, and I always say it, remembering, because all of your members, your parts are coming back into coherence, into wholeness, into oneness, right? You are remembering yourself. And we also call it integration. We call it, returning with awareness. We call it waking up, because you're waking up to, oh yeah, that's right. This whole universal journey is about the integration of light and shadow. So we are in this wave cycle. If we bring it back to the present moment, we appear to be reaching the outer amplitude of the wave, the place where the separation, the distortion, the madness, the contrast have become extreme. In the technological dominance, the psychological fragmentation, the systems totally detached from empathy, and our experience of seeing that. That's the most mind-blowing. That extreme amplitude also signals in wave dynamics the greater the amplitude, the stronger the restoring force towards equilibrium. It's like boom, right? It's going to come back. That means the more separation is experienced, the more powerful the movement back towards integration becomes. And that's why we all came back for this one, because it's a doozy. And this is where the role of the heart comes in. The heart is a coherence generator. I'm always saying we are not consumers, we are generators. Real humans are generators, because our heart is a generator of coherence. It literally produces an electromagnetic field that organizes the body. Not only can it organize us, it can organize what's around us. Amazing. And when we come back into heart coherence through breath, through presence, through song, through connection with the earth, with the sun, with our fellow beings, we begin aligning ourselves with the central line of the wave again. Right? And this is never about escaping the world, escaping the realities that are all right in front of our faces right now. No, it is about reharmonizing, recontextualizing, right? And, okay, we'll talk more about the toroidal field next time, but the matrix in this model, to bring it back, is not a separate universe. Think of it as a region of the wave where the separation has become amplified, almost like a bubble within within the oneness, where consciousness attempts to control the oscillation instead of flowing with it, right? Control systems that are attempting to freeze the wave at certain amplitudes, right? Try to contain that power. You can't do it indefinitely. Waves cannot be frozen indefinitely. They move. And the journey away from source was never outside of source. It was the wave exploring its own possibilities. This is what we have been going through. This is what we all go through. That's why there's no judgment, because we've all been there, or we're going to go there. The return to wholeness, the return of the wave, does not erase the journey. It fulfills the journey. We came here to do this. We came here to do this. We couldn't get back here fast enough at this convergence where the wave is coming back, where we get to integrate our whole entire universal journey. That's what this is all about. So coming back to the living world, okay, the earth, the sun, the human. The earth we call Sophia, right? That's her planetary consciousness, as opposed to her crust, which we call Gaia, right? Her personality, similar to us, right? My personality is called Claire, but I have something else within me, as do you, that is the expression of the light that I am, right? And it's coming through this crust. Pretty crusty on some days. Totally need a haircut. Anyway, the sun is the star expression of the masculine consciousness. The earth is the planetary expression of the feminine consciousness. These are not separate gods. These are not external authorities. They're living expressions of the same source intelligence that animates us. And the light in here, our heart light, our heart, soul, essence, the light that we are, is the same as the light out there. It is the same as the light within the earth. It's all one light, right? Which is why we're the children of this earth and the sun, mother and father. It's a fractal principle, and the same pattern repeats across the scales because everything is of the same origin. So the matrix inside this, we can see it as a distortion without demonizing it, right? Because we don't want to get caught up in the polarities. As we are facing things, as we are naming things, as we are calling things out, we don't want to find ourselves in an adversarial relationship where we get stuck in these polarities yet again. We want to continually see this in the context of the oneness, of the wholeness, which is truth. The systems we call the matrix, the consciousness that we call the matrix, is not a separate universe. It is like a fractured geometry within the one that attempts to control and extract instead of participating and exchanging, right? And that's what we humans are when we're natural, when we are knowing ourselves and remembering ourselves. We are in interrelationship with one another and with the earth and with nature and everything, right? We are in a participation and an exchange with all of that. So the difference is organic systems, that's what we original humans belong to. Those systems circulate energy, right? Whereas the parasitic systems, that parasitic consciousness, which expresses itself as what we call the matrix, that is a system that seeks to accumulate energy, accumulate it, hold on to it, instead of circulating it. And as I'm doing this motion, I'm like, oh, it's the sine wave again, right? It's the sine wave. But both of these systems are still originating or arising within the larger field of source. They come from the same place. Yeah, I see you guys. I'm happy that you're here. Okay, So if we bring it back to the individual, when we remember our connection to the one, when we feel the earth beneath us, when we feel the sun warming our skin, when we feel the heartbeat in our chest, we are not escaping the matrix. We are reorienting to the deeper field that makes the matrix possible in the first place. And that field is infinitely stronger. Let's not forget that. Because artificial systems can only imitate life. They cannot generate it. That's the whole difference. That's why they're parasitical. That's why they need us. That's why they want our energy. That's why they want, our life force, our creativity, our energy, our money. I mean, that's just the nature of it. But when consciousness remembers its origin, which is what we are in the middle of now, in the midst of, the distorted structures begin to dissolve. Not through war and fighting them, but through just a simple lack of resonance. It's just not possible for them to exist anymore. Lies collapse in the presence of truth, right? They just collapse. Control collapses in the presence of sovereignty. It cannot control that. Separation collapses in the presence of remembrance, of integration. Darkness is no more. It's gone as soon as you turn the light on, right? When you open the door to a dark room and flip on the light, suddenly the darkness is gone. That's because none of these things have an innate existence in and of themselves. There's only a spectrum of what is real, what is true, what is organic, right? There's either the absence or the presence of light. It's a question of degree. There's the absence or the presence of truth or wholeness or sovereignty, right? It's on a scale of degree. Okay. So what I wanted to express today is that even though I have been talking about and focusing on and bringing awareness to the things that need to be called out, that we need to talk about, that we need to be able to have conversations about, that we need to be able to hold within our own space, holding contradiction, holding darkness alongside the light, just as each one of us needs to be able to do that individually in order to heal ourselves and do our own shadow work, just as we need to be able to do that individually, we need to learn how to do it as a collective. We are integrating the whole shebang. That's what we're doing here. And in that, we need to not be afraid to look at what's happening, not be afraid to look at the dark, right? They say that if you're having a recurring nightmare where something is chasing you and you're trying to get away and you're terrified and you're afraid, right? If you're having a dream like that, you should turn around and face the thing that's chasing you, right? That's the collective act that we're in. Okay, not everybody, but a lot of people, right? Are like, let's look this demon in the eye, right? But we don't give our attention exclusively to that, and certainly not with fear. We must remember that this is within the one. Nothing is outside the one. This is what our whole journey has been about remembering. I'm blowing my own mind as I'm contemplating it here. Nothing is outside of it. Nothing can be outside of it. Not even those who have forgotten their connection to the one, to the whole. We're not even here to judge them. We're here to recognize, oh, we all do that. We've all done that. And now we are bringing the whole thing back into balance. This is the invitation of a lifetime, of many lifetimes in this universe. The culmination of a whole entire universal journey for many of us. And the invitation of this, I'm getting all choked up, in this moment of history is not to fight the shadows endlessly or despair of it and say, oh, well, I guess we're all fucked, you know. It's to just remember that the field contains, and it's to remember the field that contains all of it. When enough of us live from that remembrance, well, the whole world reorganizes itself around it. The real is not somewhere else. It is right here, right now, in me, in you. It is the field in which everything is happening, including our remembering. And I think that's a great reason to smile and to laugh and to not take this whole thing too seriously all the time, right? Even when we're in our darkest places, we need to be able to laugh, to smile, to cry, to take a deep breath, to connect with one another. I always think about when my stepfather, beloved stepfather, was dying here at home. He was dying of cancer, and we were all gathered as a family with his daughters and his grandchildren, and me, my family, my brother, his family, my mom. You know, we were all here at the house, and we were so sad. We were grieving as he was leaving. You know, we knew it wasn't going to be long. But I also remember those days, weeks, as some of the most meaningful, fun family time that we ever got to spend together, because we were all together. We were united in grief, united in love, and making each other laugh. And my mom said, you know, that my stepdad could hear us on the back porch from his bed, and that it made him so happy to know that we were all together and sharing this time. So let's remember that no matter what's going on in the world, we're bigger. We are so much bigger. The field, the infinite field, everything is coming out of that, whether we call it light or whether we call it shadow. Well, thank you for your presence. I can feel your active energy today, folks, and thank you for being here. Thanks for tuning in and being willing to listen to all of this, and being willing to take in a larger reality, a larger cosmology, a larger, just being willing to open yourselves up to contrasting expressions. That's what it takes. Okay. Thank you. Lots of love. I'll see you guys next week.